My family decided to make a joke and left me in another city. Haha, let him get there on his own now. I never came back. 15 years later, I was found, 109 missed calls from those who had once laughed. The summer I turned 22 was supposed to be uneventful. Just another stretch of long days working at my dad's hardware store, sleeping under the same roof I'd been stuck under my whole life, and getting verbally beaten down by the same voices that had always kept me small. No college, according to my dad. College is for people who can't handle the real world. No friends left in town. No life to call my own. My name's Leo, and back then I was still the family scapegoat. Still the one who never did enough, never showed gratitude, never measured up. And trust me, I tried. You try living in the shadow of a brother like Jake. The golden boy, the charming one, the one who could screw up 6 ways from Sunday and still get called ambitious, while I got told I was lucky to have a roof over my head. We weren't poor, exactly, but we lived like money was always about to run out. Vacations weren't a thing in our house. So when my dad, Ronald, announced we were taking a family road trip to my uncle's wedding in Colorado, I knew something was off. My mom, Donna, pretended it was exciting. She had this habit of smiling with her mouth but not her eyes. Jake looked like he'd just been told he'd been crowned king again, even though he hadn't been in high school for 4 years. 3 days into that road trip, I was already regretting not coming up with an excuse to stay behind. I could have said I needed to cover shifts at the store. I could have lied and said I was sick. Anything would have been better than being trapped in a car with my dad and brother tagging each other in to insult me like it was a game. Donna would chime in occasionally with a weak "boys, that's enough." But no one listened. She didn't mean it. She never did. If I'm being honest, I should have seen it coming. We stopped at this random rest stop somewhere deep in Colorado. The kind of place that doesn't even show up on GPS until you're already pulling into the cracked pavement lot. There were mountains in the distance, an old concrete bathroom building with vending machines, and absolutely nothing else. I'd been crammed in the back seat of our beat-up Ford Explorer for hours. I needed to stretch my legs. I needed a minute of air that wasn't laced with tension. I told them I was going to use the bathroom. No one acknowledged me. My phone was charging in the front, so I left it. Wallet? Still in the duffel bag shoved under the back seat. I wasn't planning on leaving the planet. Just taking a piss. 10 minutes. That's all it took. When I came back outside, squinting in the sharp Colorado sun, the parking spot was empty. Our car gone. At first, I thought they were messing with me, that Jake had convinced Dad to move the car around the back for a laugh. So I walked the perimeter of the rest area, checked every parking spot, even the road shoulder. Nothing. I even looked behind the building. I kept waiting to hear the engine, to hear them laughing as they pulled up and said I'd been so easy to fool. But no one came. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. People came and went. A few looked at me like I was loitering or casing the place. A truck driver asked if I was okay, and I told him I was waiting for someone. I said it like I believed it. After 2 hours, I stopped lying to myself. They weren't coming back. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a mistake. My own family had left me. Deliberately. On the side of the road, in the middle of nowhere, without a phone, without money, without even shoes that didn't have holes in them. I sat on the curb, staring out at the highway like something would appear to save me. I thought about trying to borrow someone's phone. I thought about calling them, begging, even, maybe if I apologized for something I didn't even do, they'd come back. Maybe if I cried enough, it would flip some switch in my dad's head that made him realize what he'd done. But instead of reaching out to them, my mind played back every moment that led up to this. Every insult. Every time Jake laughed at my expense. Every time Ronald told me I was worthless or dead weight. Every time Donna said nothing. Every birthday that felt like a funeral. Every holiday that turned into a guilt trip. Every dinner where I ate in silence while they tore me apart. And I heard Jake's voice in my head, laughing. Bet he's crying right now. I heard Ronald's low growl. He'll figure it out if he's not as stupid as he looks. I heard my mom's silence louder than either of them. So I stood up. I took a breath. And I made a decision. I approached a woman who was loading her kids into the back of a minivan. She flinched when I got too close. I must have looked like hell, but I kept my voice calm and polite. I asked if I could use her phone, told her there'd been a family emergency and I just needed to make a quick call. She hesitated, but eventually handed it over. I didn't call my family. I called information and got the number for a shelter in Grand Junction, about 40 miles away. Then I asked the woman if she could drop me off somewhere in town. Told her my family had to leave suddenly but someone would pick me up later. She didn't look convinced, but I must have seemed harmless enough because she agreed. The shelter was sobering. I had nothing but the clothes on my back. No ID, no money, no one to call. The man running the front desk, David, didn't ask questions. He gave me a cot, showed me the rules, offered me access to a computer. I remembered seeing my uncle's address on the wedding invitation back home. Thought maybe I could crash the wedding and confront them there. But the more I stared at the screen, the more I realized, why? Why chase after people who threw me away? Why try to reattach myself to a family who considered me disposable? Instead, I created a new email account. I looked up how to replace a lost ID. I Googled places that paid cash under the table. I started making a plan. 2 days later, I walked into a rundown little diner on the edge of town. Sonny's. It smelled like bacon grease and old coffee. The owner, Geraldine, a 60-something woman with silver hair streaked with purple and tattoos up both arms, gave me a once-over and raised an eyebrow. "Dishwasher quit yesterday," she said. "You steal from me, I'll kill you. Start now." And that was it. That was how my new life began. I worked doubles, slept at the shelter, wore clothes that didn't fit. Dave helped me file for a new birth certificate from my home state. I saved up enough from tips and wages to buy a prepaid phone at Walmart. My hands were always sore. My back ached. I was constantly exhausted. But I felt more alive than I ever had under my father's roof. A week after they left me, my phone rang. Blocked number. I picked up. "Leo?" My mother's voice shaking. "Oh, thank God. Where are you? Are you okay?" I didn't answer right away. In the background, I heard Ronald bark something like, "Tell him to stop being dramatic." Then Jake, laughing. "Bet he's milking this for attention." She kept talking. Panicked, worried, confused, pretending they'd only driven a little ways down the road. And when they came back, I wasn't there. I took a long breath and said the only thing I could. "You wanted to see if I could make it on my own? Watch me." Then I hung up, and I blocked the number. The next day, I walked into the Verizon store and changed my number completely. Before I did, I saw the call log. 27 missed calls. Probably all of them trying to reel me back in once the joke stopped being funny. I never answered. That was the first week of my real life. The thing about starting over with nothing is that your expectations reset completely. Hot food tastes like luxury. Clean socks feel like a miracle. A soft place to sleep, even if it smells like bleach and someone else's bad dreams, is a gift. I spent the first 2 weeks at the shelter like I was holding my breath. Half expecting to wake up back in my old room, Jake throwing something at my head, Dad pounding on the wall because I'd slept too long, Mom pretending she didn't hear any of it. But I didn't wake up. Every morning, I opened my eyes and saw the same gray walls, the rows of cots, the flickering light in the hallway outside the dorm. And I was free. Not safe. Not secure. But free. At Sonny's, Geraldine quickly realized I wasn't afraid of hard work. I scrubbed dishes until my hands cracked, took out trash, cleaned grease traps that smelled like hell's basement. I never complained. I didn't know how to, not after a lifetime of being told my problems weren't real. 3 weeks in, she handed me a set of used cook whites and told me to show up at 5 a.m. to help with prep. "I'll teach you how not to chop off a finger," she said, handing me a knife. "Don't waste my time." That was the first real thing anyone had offered me in years, a skill. Not a handout. Not pity. Just a chance to prove I could be more than what I'd been told I was. At night, I slept at the shelter, but during the day, I lived in the kitchen. The rhythm of the place, the clatter of plates, the hiss of the griddle, Geraldine barking orders like a sergeant, became familiar. Safe. Comforting even. By week 4, I'd saved up enough to rent a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat. It had one window, a creaky radiator, and always smelled like fabric softener and burnt lint, but it was mine. I bought a sleeping bag from Goodwill and a pillow from Walmart. That first night, lying on the floor in my empty apartment, I cried for the first time since the rest stopped. Not because I was sad, because I'd survived. I didn't tell anyone where I was. Not my old classmates. Not the few people I used to talk to online. And especially not my family. I kept the burner phone number private and changed my email again, setting up new accounts from scratch. The only connection I kept to the past was one I checked in secret, the email address they knew. Just to see if they'd reached out again. They had. Mostly from my mom. Please come home. We're so sorry. Your dad didn't mean it. Then one from Ronald himself. This childish stunt needs to end. Grow up and come back. And Jake, of course, being Jake. Dude, it was a joke. Stop being such a little bitch. I never replied. I let their words pile up like trash I refused to take out. It was strange, really, the silence from my end. It was the first time in my life I'd held the power to ignore them. And I didn't want to give it back. One rainy Thursday afternoon, a woman started coming into Sunny's like clockwork, always around 3 p.m., always alone, always with a med school textbook open in front of her and half a dozen highlighters scattered across the counter. Her name was Kendra. I didn't know that at first, of course. All I knew was that she liked her Denver omelet with no tomatoes, extra cheese, and coffee strong enough to strip paint. She wore oversized hoodies, old sneakers, and a look of exhaustion that felt all too familiar. For 4 months, I poured her refills, cleared her plates, and watched as she disappeared into her world of medical jargon and silent focus. Then one day, she looked up at me, narrowed her eyes, and said, "You know your name tag's wrong, right?" Says Lou. I looked down. It did. It wasn't wrong. I just started wearing different misspellings of my name on purpose. Stupid, I know. But it made me laugh. It made the other staff laugh. And now it made her laugh too. That dumb joke became our thing. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she'd walk in and say something like, "What is it today? Leo? You? Leo?" And I'd act shocked and say something like, "Whoops. Gotta talk to management." Eventually, she stayed longer. Talked more. One day, I mentioned I lived above the laundromat and she said, "Wait, the one next to the vape shop?" I nodded. She said, "That place smells like detergent and regret." I laughed harder than I had in months. Our first date wasn't even supposed to be a date. Her study group canceled last minute and she had a reservation at a pizza place that usually had a 3-week wait list. She looked up from her phone, caught me wiping the counter nearby, and said, "Wanna come eat fancy carbs with me?" I said yes before my brain caught up. It was awkward. We both spent the first 10 minutes pretending it wasn't a date while obviously acting like it was. But somewhere between the garlic knots and the third shared slice, we relaxed. She was smart, sarcastic, and sharp as hell. She didn't flinch when I said I'd never been to college. Didn't bat an eye when I told her I didn't speak to my family. She just said, "Everyone's got ghosts," and took another bite of pizza. 6 months later, she moved into my studio. We bought a futon off Craigslist, argued over shampoo brands, and shared a single drawer for our socks. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like home. By then, I'd moved up to line cook at Sunny's. Geraldine still ruled the place like a tattooed queen, but she started treating me like more than just a charity case. When I mentioned taking online business classes, she grunted and said, "About damn time." So I did. I bought a cheap second-hand laptop and enrolled in community college courses. Business management, accounting, basic leadership. Stuff my father would have laughed at. Paper crap, he used to call it. But it made sense to me. It gave structure to all the things I was already doing without realizing it. I still didn't talk to my family, but I couldn't help checking in from time to time, through a dummy Facebook account, mostly. What I saw confirmed everything I suspected. Dad's hardware store was circling the drain. Home Depot had opened on the edge of town, and the foot traffic dried up almost overnight. His posts were bitter, desperate rants about corporate America and lazy kids who don't want to work. Mom's profile was a shrine to nostalgia. Throwback photos of birthday parties, vacation pics from 20 years ago, captions like, "Miss my boy's broken heart." Except she only ever tagged Jake. Like I never existed. Jake was a mess. Bounced from one gig to the next. Vague posts about haters and new opportunities. Photos of him at bars, in hotel lobbies, with people I didn't recognize. One post said, "Back on that grind, flex biceps," and got 3 likes. I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just distance. One morning, Geraldine pulled me aside during inventory. "You ever thought about running your own place?" she asked, not looking up from the clipboard. I blinked. "My own what?" "Restaurant. I'm thinking of opening another Sonny's across town. Not as big. Different menu. You'd run it." I stared at her. "You serious?" She looked up. "You think I joke about payroll?" That night, I told Kendra. She was half asleep, one arm draped over her eyes. She didn't even open them. Just mumbled, "If you say no, I'll slap you." Doug, my neighbor, a bass player with a day job in HVAC and a hobby of brewing beer that tasted like lemon-scented cleaning fluid, just nodded through a haze of weed smoke and said, "Duh, you already run this one." I still didn't feel ready, but I said yes, because Geraldine wasn't Ronald, and I wasn't Leo the failure anymore. 6 months later, Sonny's East opened its doors. I designed the menu. I hired the staff. I worked 90-hour weeks, dropped 10 pounds, forgot to pay rent once, and fought with Kendra about never being home. She left passive-aggressive sticky notes on the fridge. "Nice to see you exist. Your girlfriend." But she stayed. We made it work. People came. People came back. The food was good. The vibe was better. We weren't rich, but we were surviving. One night, about a year after the opening, I logged into my original email, the one I hadn't touched in months, just to see, just to make sure the past was still buried. There was a new message. From my mom. "Your grandmother has been asking about you. Please just let us know you're okay." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the tab, deleted the account, and threw my old SIM card into the dumpster behind the restaurant. That night, Geraldine taught me how to make her famous apple pie. "You've got good hands for pastry," she said. It was the first real compliment I could remember believing. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed anybody an explanation. I was just living. By the time I turned 25, the version of me who stood stranded at that Colorado rest stop felt like a shadow I could barely recognize. My days were a rhythm I could trust. Open up Sonny's East at 6 a.m., go over inventory, prep for the breakfast rush, try to keep the fryer from setting itself on fire again. Kendra's med school schedule was brutal, but we stole mornings together when we could. Sundays, mostly, folding laundry while half-watching bad reality shows, trading complaints about burnt toast and classmates who didn't pull their weight. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. We'd moved into a slightly bigger apartment a few blocks away. Nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a bathroom that didn't leak, and a kitchen we could both stand in without bumping elbows. It felt massive compared to the shoebox I'd lived in above the laundromat. We even had a couch that hadn't been rescued from the curb. Things were working. Not perfectly, but enough. And then my grandmother died. I found out the way I found out most things about my old life through social media. It was a Facebook post from my mom. A long, rambling paragraph written in that overly sentimental way people do when they're trying to sound more broken than they actually are. There were heart emojis. A grainy photo of my grandma, Rose, holding me as a baby. A caption that said, "Gone too soon. Heaven gained an angel." I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the screen, feeling nothing, then too much, then nothing again. Grandma Rose was the only one in my family who ever really saw me. She wasn't loud about it. She wasn't the kind of grandmother who baked cookies or defended me in family fights. But she did little things. Slipped me $20 bills and said, "Tuck it away, sweetie, for the day you finally leave this place." I always thought she meant college. Turns out she meant exactly what I'd done. She was quiet, but she never laughed when Dad tore me down. She never told me to toughen up when Jake pushed me too far. She'd just look at me, soft and sad, like she knew I was surviving something nobody else would admit was real. And now she was gone. I told Kendra that night. She offered to come with me to the funeral. Said she'd hold my hand through the whole thing. Doug, bless him, offered to loan me his ancient hatchback if I didn't want to fly. Geraldine didn't say much, just shrugged and muttered, "Dead people don't know if you're there. Do what gives you peace." So I didn't go. I sent flowers, a generic sympathy arrangement, white lilies, a card that said, simply, from Leo, no return address, no note. The fallout was immediate. Mom posted again, another Facebook sermon about signs from beyond, and how she knew someone out there still cares. Jake added cryptic comments like, maybe some prodigal sons come back late, which sounded more like a self-justification than anything else. Dad didn't say a word online, never did. But I could imagine the tension behind closed doors. The storm brewing. A week later, I got a friend request on one of my burner accounts. No profile picture. No mutual friends. The name was fake. Clearly something made up. But the message was real. It's Uncle Rick. Your mom gave me your old email, but it bounced. Are you okay? They're worried. Your dad has been asking around about you. I sat there, staring at the message, hands suddenly ice cold. My vision tunneled. My chest tightened. Felt like I was 22 again. Like I was back at that rest stop, no phone, no wallet, no way out. That night, I had my first panic attack in 2 years. It hit at 3:07 a.m. I was on the bathroom floor, trying to breathe, trying not to wake Kendra. The tile was cold under my palms. My heart thudded like it was trying to escape. My mind kept racing. What if they found out where I worked? What if they showed up? What if they ruined everything? Kendra found me there, curled up beside the tub, hands clenched in my hair. She didn't say anything at first, just sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. When I could finally speak, I told her about the message, about the way my dad used to look at me like I was gum on the bottom of his boot, about the way my mom cried in public but went silent at home, about Jake and his twisted smile when he cornered me in the hallway just to tell me I'd never be anything. She didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix it, just listened. And then she said the simplest thing in the world. They can't take anything from you that you don't give them. The next morning I called a lawyer. Not because I was expecting trouble, but because I wanted to be ready. I asked about restraining orders, about legal boundaries, about privacy protections. I tightened my security settings on everything. I warned Geraldine and my staff not to give out any information about me to anyone they didn't know personally. I even had a small camera installed near the back entrance of Sunny's East, just in case. It might have looked paranoid, but it made me feel safe. 5 years to the day after they left me at that rest stop, I married Kendra. It was a small ceremony at a state park just outside town. Simple, beautiful, no drama. Doug was my best man. He showed up with mismatched socks and a six-pack of his latest beer experiment. Still awful, still endearing. Geraldine made the cake herself, cried through the whole thing, wore a flower crown and bossed around the caterers like a wedding planner with no license and no chill. Kendra's family was big and loud and welcoming in a way that made my chest ache. Her dad made dad jokes that didn't make me flinch. Her mom hugged me without setting off any alarms in my head. Her younger cousins danced like lunatics and demanded second slices of cake. It was chaos and joy and everything I thought I'd never have. I built a family, not found it, not stumbled into it, built it. A week later, I was scrolling through my dummy Facebook account, mostly out of habit, when I saw it, a post on a community page from back home. Looking for my son, Leo Carter. Last known location, Grand Junction, Colorado. Family emergency. If anyone has information, please message me. The name on the post? Ronald Carter. My father. There was no emergency. I knew that instinctively. If someone was sick or dying, they wouldn't be posting on a public forum. They'd be calling hospitals, lawyers, police. This wasn't about love or panic. It was about need. So I did what I always did. I dug. Created a fresh fake account. Joined the hometown pages. Lurked through the threads. And piece by piece it came together. The hardware store had closed. Foreclosed. The building was empty. Tagged up. Windows covered in cheap plywood. My parents' house, the one I'd been shoved around in for 2 decades, was listed on a foreclosure site. My mom had been posting vague messages about medical struggles and hard decisions. Jake had moved back home after his third DUI. His latest business idea, something to do with NFTs, had tanked. He was still trying to act like he had it all figured out. They weren't looking for me because they missed me. They were looking for me because they'd run out of lifelines. And for the first time in 5 years, I smiled. Not because they were suffering. I don't take pleasure in that. But because I realized something important. I didn't care anymore. I closed the laptop, went to bed beside my wife, and slept like a man who no longer owed his ghosts a damn thing. "15 years. That's how long it had been since they left me at that rest stop in Colorado. 15 years of building something from nothing. Of peeling off the old skin they wrapped me in. Of learning what it meant to be safe. To be seen. To be loved. I thought I was past it. Thought I'd laid all of it to rest. Then I got the LinkedIn notification. Someone had viewed my profile 27 times. Same name, same city, same IP block. Jay Carter. My brother. I stared at the screen longer than I'd like to admit. It wasn't just the name. It was the memory it dragged behind it like a net full of broken glass. And just like that, I was 22 again. Back on the side of the road. No phone. No wallet. Just that bottomless, stunned silence in my chest. I told Kendra that night, folding laundry together while the kids watched a cartoon in the other room. She held up 2 mismatched socks, gave me a half smile, and said, "Do you want to talk about it?" I said no. Then spent the rest of the night awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he wanted. I got my answer 3 days later. I was doing inventory at Sunny's East, the original second location, when Maya, one of our servers, stuck her head into the back and said, "Hey, there's some people up front asking for you." Family? I thought maybe Kendra's parents had dropped by. They did that sometimes when passing through. My brain went straight into hosting mode. Smile. Offer coffee. Make space. But when I stepped into the dining area, I froze. It was them. My father, Ronald, looked smaller. Grayer. His once imposing presence hollowed out by time and consequence. My mom, Donna, stood beside him with that tight, pinched expression she used to wear when bills piled up. Her hair was dyed too dark and didn't match her skin tone. She looked like she was trying to turn back the clock and losing the fight. And Jake, he looked exactly like our father did at 40. Same posture. Same smug alertness. The same way of scanning a room like he owned it. There was also a younger woman hanging back. Nervous. Quiet. Watching me like she wasn't sure if she should be there. No one said a word at first. I heard the buzz of the fluorescent lights. The soft hum of the coffee machine. The world narrowing to just this uncomfortable stillness. Then Ronald said my name. Not a demand. Not a bark. Just a question. "Leo?" I nodded. My throat was too dry to speak. I'd imagined this moment so many times over the years. Sometimes I told them off in a dramatic speech, stormed out, left them speechless. Other times I was cool, detached, untouchable. In one version, the most pathetic one, I cried and we all hugged it out like we'd ever had that kind of love in the first place. Reality was none of those. I pointed to a table in the corner. Asked Maya to bring water. Then I sat down and waited. They talked over each other at first. My mom said she'd seen an article, one of those local business spotlights, in a community magazine with a photo of me standing outside Sunny's. Her friend from high school had sent it to her. "Isn't this your son?" Ronald mentioned the post he'd made on Facebook. Claimed they'd tried calling my old number hundreds of times. Donna nodded tearfully and said she'd kept track. 109 calls, apparently. Jake chuckled like we were catching up after a long trip. He told me I looked healthy. Said I must be doing all right for myself. I didn't respond. The woman next to him finally introduced herself as Poppy, Jake's second wife. She seemed unsure whether to smile or apologize. They went on for 15 minutes. Talking. Justifying. Rewriting history. "We didn't mean to leave you. You disappeared before we could come back. We didn't know how bad things were for you." None of it tracked. But they said it anyway. Finally, when they ran out of steam, I asked the only thing I cared about. "Why now?" That's when the truth slipped through the cracks. Ronald had health issues, a heart condition that needed surgery. No insurance. They'd lost their second home to foreclosure. Donna needed a knee replacement. Jake's crypto startup had collapsed, taking most of their remaining savings with it. They were drowning. And I was a lifeboat. They weren't here to reconnect. They were here for help. I should have been angry. Should have thrown them out. Yelled. Laughed. Something. But all I felt was pity. These people who once towered over me like monsters in a child's closet now looked like broken furniture. Shaky. Useless. Worn out. I told them I needed time. That I wanted to talk it over with Kendra. I gave them my address. Invited them to dinner. They acted like that meant yes. That afternoon felt like walking through a memory I no longer belonged in. I picked up my daughter, Ellie, from her dance class. Helped my son, Mason, with his show and tell project. Texted Kendra updates while she was still at the clinic. Told her I wanted them to meet my family, not for reunion but for closure. She offered to take the kids to her sister's. I said no. I wanted them there. Dinner was my version of chicken enchiladas. Nothing fancy, just something warm, reliable, familiar. Ellie set the table. Forks on the wrong side. Kendra quietly fixed them. Mason insisted on wearing his Spider-Man costume. "It's Tuesday," he said, as if that explained everything. When the doorbell rang, I nearly dropped the baking dish. Kendra touched my arm. "I've got your back," she whispered. "No matter what." They came in looking like visitors to a museum that used to be their house. Staring. Overcompensating. Ronald kept calling Kendra Karen, even after correction. Donna started crying every time she looked at the kids, which weirded Mason out so much he hid under the table for part of the meal. Jake tried small talk. Poppy asked about the school district. It was all polite on the surface. But underneath, the tension was thick enough to slice. After dinner, Kendra took the kids upstairs for baths and bedtime. I sat alone with them in the living room. Ronald launched into his speech. Family. Forgiveness. How proud he was of me. How we all make mistakes. Then came the ask. "It's not charity, Leo. Just a loan. 20,000. To get back on our feet." He said it like it was nothing. Like I hadn't been left for dead. Like this was a reunion. I let him talk. Let all of them talk. Then I asked him if he remembered what he said to me on my 18th birthday. He blinked. "No," I reminded him. "At least you can't disappoint me anymore once you're not legally my problem." I turned to Donna. "Do you remember what you did when he tore up my community college acceptance letter in front of me?" Her lip trembled. She didn't answer. "Nothing," I said for her. Then to Jake. "Do you remember telling Becca, my first girlfriend, that I was probably gay and using her for a beard?" He looked away. The silence that followed was heavy. Satisfying. I stood up, went into my office, came back with an envelope, handed it to Ronald. He opened it. Inside was a check for $73.50. He squinted. "What the hell is this?" "That's how much a Greyhound ticket cost in 2010. From Grand Junction back to our hometown," I said. "The exact amount it would have taken to come get me after you left me." He stared at me, then started shouting. The old Ronald was back in an instant. Accusing. Furious. Spitting old lines like greatest hits. "You ungrateful little. You always were a disappointment. You don't leave family behind." And all I could do was stand there and marvel. Because I wasn't scared. I wasn't shaking. I was done. Donna tried guilt. Tears. She called me baby, like that word still fit in her mouth. Jake's charm dropped like a mask. Cold. Calculating. Poppy looked like she wanted to disappear. I walked to the door. Opened it. Held it. No words. Ronald threw the check at my feet. They left. I locked the door behind them. Stood there for a moment, breathing. Then I went to help Kendra with the dishes. Checked on the kids. Tucked in Spider-Man. Set the security alarm. Out of curiosity, I pulled up the front door camera on my phone. They were still in the driveway, arguing. Ronald waving his arms. Donna crying. Jake staring at the house like it owed him something. Like I owed him something. Finally, they got in their rental car and drove away. I've never seen them again. That's the thing about revenge. The best kind doesn't come with shouting matches or courtroom showdowns. It doesn't end in dramatic exits or public confrontations. It looks like quiet Sunday mornings with your wife and kids. It looks like bedtime stories and clean kitchens. It looks like a life built on your terms. I never made it back home. I built one instead.